Welcome, everyone, to Rock M Radio. This is a brand new episode of Dive Cuts. We're here, still season 7, but in season for the first time since March of 2023. This is an in-season podcast. We are here to talk about your Missouri basketball Tigers. I am your host, Sam Snelling. If you are watching on YouTube, you can see me on your left. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button. The guy is waving circles with his arms is the co-host tonight, Matthew J. Harris, all the way from the plains of Indiana, where his neighborhood Hoosiers took down the mighty Florida Gulf Coast Eagles. Is that right? That feels right.
It is.
All right. Matt, how are you?
I'm well. My wife is disappointed that IU managed to execute down the stretch.
They did. They went on like a 16-2 run, and then promptly farted away about 8 to 10 points.
Yeah. I was like, I'll like walk into the end of that when I was doing my rewatch of Missouri's win, which we'll talk about. And I was like, oh, things are getting a little bit more comfortable. And I flip over and like I think it was right when Florida Gulf Coast went on like a 8-0 spurt in like less than 40 seconds. It was. I think they hit a 3, called a timeout, and on the inbounds sold the ball, hit another 3, and forced another turnover. Yeah, it was
it was bad.
When I had stat broadcast up for it, it was because my wife is a Butler alum and works with IU alums, and she was like, they're all really nervous here now. And I pulled up the stat broadcast. I was like, I would be. IU was not great defensively for a long stretch of that game, but managed to pull it together and get a win. But we are not an IU podcast. We are a Missouri podcast.
We are basketball fans, though. So I think whenever there's hoops on, chances are we're trying to watch it.
Oh, there's a quad box on my TV right now. So if you
I'm
folks
looking forward to I am looking. I always look forward to kind of having a night off here and there, but I'm looking forward to kind of catching some more NBA action. I think the NBA's been kind of interesting so far this early season. But are you currently watching basketball? Like this is where we're at on our podcast. Is we're live broadcasting Matt watching basketball.
I'll turn the quad box off now. There we go. Sorry. Creighton's absolutely just strafing Florida A&M early. Sorry. Now I'm back. There we go.
Yeah, the important early season games. Much like our fair Tigers, who just last night, we're recording this on Tuesday, November 7th?
Yep.
Yeah, 7th. Tuesday, November 7th, and on Monday, November 6th, Missouri took down the mighty Golden Lions from the University of Arkansas-Pine Bluff. They scored 101 points to Arkansas-Pine Bluff 79. So I wrote a study hall about it. You've watched the game twice. We have things that we can talk about. Notable, I think, is worth kind of bringing up that Connor Vanover, a lot of people were kind of projecting him as a potential starter at the center position, is sitting out for 3 games. So that was the first game. He'll miss Friday's game. And then they play SIUE after that. So he'll miss those 3 games before he can play. And then John Tanji was out as well.
Yep.
There was no formal word on him not playing. I think it was more probably precautionary. He's kind of been dealing with whatever the mystery lower body injury seems to be, something with his foot or leg or whatever.
Yeah.
But he did not play. So we got a good amount of freshmen, and we got a good amount of the back end of the rotation, or at least guys that we anticipate probably being in the back end of the rotation. Mm-hmm. We got healthy doses of Aiden Shaw. We got nice performances from Tamar Bates. Caleb Grill went to the free throw line a lot. He didn't shoot the
Yeah.
ball that well, but he still put up 15 points. And the leading shot taker on the night was Nick Honor, which I I'm not pulling up any stats on this. This is strictly me going from the gut, but I'm going to say that might be the first time since he left Fordham where Honor
Probably.
was the leading shot taker.
Probably. Yeah. They certainly let him hunt an early clock, especially in the second half. Nick decided to drive the car himself and see what he
Missed a
could
few
do there.
layups.
Missed a few layups that would probably have made the scoring tally look a little bit better. But yeah, sort of the biggest surprise tonight to me was Nick shooting a lot. Everything else was, I think once you knew that Vanover and Tanji were sitting, the rest of the sort of rotation made sense. I think the one thing that was jarring was how they sort of sequenced rolling guys out. But I looked this morning just kind of at the minutes distributions and sort of, how things ultimately panned out. And I don't think it was ultimately very surprising sort of when the minutes distributions, worked out, what we saw last night. But I do think how Dennis kind of structured the rotation early on was pretty notable. But, they did what they were supposed to do. They went out, they got, a pretty established lead near the end of the first half, expanded it early in the second, kind of, spent the last 10 minutes in garbage time, on tape. Not a lot of, real divergence from what they ran a year ago defensively. Kind of the same approach. I think you wrote it today. It was like they looked like the Missouri basketball team that we saw a year ago. And, I think that's sort of an endorsement for at least this staff having, a pretty clear stylistic identity. They executed it, probably 80 to 90% of what they needed to do last night and got a reasonably comfortable win, and nobody else got hurt. So it was everything you sort of want to see from an opener. And also, like you mentioned and kind of ran through, they got, some nice performances from guys that, I think we had questions about in the preseason as to what they would translate like early on. I think there were some heartening signs early on there. So overall, what you expect, what you want to see. Now we see what happens when you ratchet up the competition on Friday.
Yeah, so let's kind of just go over some positives. Obviously, I think for me, for probably a lot of people, it was really exciting to see Tamar Bates play like we hoped he could play, and really, what amounted to a limited role. I think the broadcaster kind of made a point to sort of bring up as Bates buying into more of a per minute production versus an overall, by game production, which I think we're used to saying, oh, this guy's, averaging 11 points a game versus, what's he doing, when he's on the floor. His minutes weren't, I can't remember off the top of my head. I probably should have it in front of me, but I want to say it was only in like the lower 20s, 21, 22 maybe. So for him to have that kind of output, without going over 25 minutes, doing it in an efficient way, getting to the rim, hitting threes, that's basically the player that I thought he was going to become coming out of high school and just never quite materialized in Indiana.
Yeah, to me the biggest difference here is I think he's in a system, and we wrote about it a little bit in the preseason. We wrote about it after he committed, where I think it suits him more. It's funny that we mentioned IU. IU looked very similar to how they looked a year ago, which is they've got a couple really good big guys that are going to play through big guys in the block a lot. There's not a ton of off-ball action that really happens. There's not a lot of ball movement and player movement. Sometimes it happens in IU system. It's very much sort of like we're going to play in the post, or we're going to have a lead guard driving the car out of a ball screen. I think last night was really, really nice to see sort of Tamar in different setups. Tamar was playing, on the second side of some of their pinch post stuff. He was getting the ball. One of his jumpers that he got, was coming off kind of a down screen where he gets a jumper. He gets a ball reversal to an empty side of the floor, and the guy reversing him the ball is Missouri's undersized 5 who's on the perimeter. So when he plays in a straight line, he's not running into Trace Jackson Davis and a primary defender and a help defender. So the spacing, I think, one, helps him a lot. And, two, I think just playing in this system, he's not being asked to hold aside and space the floor out and keep a gap open. It's, okay, when you get the ball, we don't expect you just to shoot it. Put her on the deck and go. And I think that was the biggest difference, too, is it's not just, okay, yes, there's more space, but we want you to maintain that. It's go make a play. And the types of plays we saw him make were the kinds of plays you saw him make at Piper and IMG. On the second side of the floor, you saw him be aggressive in some early clock stuff. So I just think, we'll see what happens once the competition ramps up. But I think it was really heartening to sort of, just see in that small sample size, okay, these are the sort of play style traits we saw in him. There's some facets of what Missouri does that really do translate for him. We have to scale that up a little bit, but I think it would have been worrying if, you had just seen him come in and, been a guy that was sort of stashed in the corner, waiting and camping. He wasn't that. He was very assertive. There were opportunities and actions and spot and spaces for him to do the things we've seen him do. And, just for him to come home and, feel like he can get, in a place mentally where he's a little bit more comfortable in a system that fits him a little bit, I think is heartening. So overall, what you want to see, does it translate against Memphis and a backcourt that I think is going to have the kinds of athletes to take some of those things away? Sure, but on the night, really, really great to see Tamar get back to kind of, I think, who his core, traits are as a player. I think that's probably the best way to think about it.
Yeah, I think for the most part, he was probably the most valuable, guy on the floor when he was on the floor. I think he's always kind of had the potential to be that guy. It was just kind of a matter of getting him to the right, sort of time and space. And it looks like, at least the staff has a good plan for him. I think the other, main positive that I sort of took out of it was the play of Aiden Shaw. Again, we do have to factor in the competition level and all that, but he didn't attempt a 3-pointer. He was 3 or 4 from the floor. All of his shots were basically at the rim. He had 9 rebounds. 9 rebounds.
That message has resonated.
Well, right, yeah. So, that was what I was going to say is that, one of the things that I think has been communicated to Aiden is, we don't need you to be like this guy. We need you to be this guy, and that guy is a guy who does the hustle plays. We need you to block shots. We need you to rebound the ball. And then when you have the opportunity, dunk the hell out of the ball. And I 7 points, 9 rebounds. I don't know that he's going to do that every night, but it's hard to keep a guy off the floor when he is that impactful on the glass and can finish the way that Aiden does. And I think when you're looking at, we have always kind of questioned what was going to happen with Aiden this year. And with good reason. Last year, he didn't really play a whole lot. It was kind of hit and miss when he would play. He's a guy who just doesn't have a high level of skill at this point. And so for, an offense that Dennis Gates really wants guys with a lot of skill, it was going to be hard for him to carve out minutes. This is how you do it.
Yeah. Yeah. There was one moment where he put the ball on the floor, drove, got cut off, played off 2 feet, had a nice finish. But other than that, it was, I'm either going to look or get off of it. I think there were sometimes last year where he could be a little bit of a ball stopper for them, where he would catch, sometimes decide if he was going to shoot, decide what he wanted to do. At least last night when he caught it, he ripped and he attacked. It wasn't the most, beautiful straight line drive, but at least there was some decisiveness there. but you saw him as a really good cutter. You saw him making those plays that were pretty decisive and getting to the rim. Defensively, I think he was better off the ball than we saw him a year ago. More reliable, kind of in team defense, more reliable in rotation. People are going to look at the blocks and they're going to kind of look at one I think where he basically swallowed up a shot, but there were some plays last night where I thought he just did a really, really nice job where, last from the empty side of the floor, maybe he would be a little bit lost in rotation. Maybe, that second, after a guy retreat dribbled, and attacked him again, he would kind of slip up a little bit. Just sound kind of in those moments, where it's, either in rotation or in isolation. He looked really, really good. On the glass, second, third effort going back, really, really important. This team, last year might do a great job on the initial, shot, but they were just awful on the glass. If he can give you that, it's really important. Just there are things that I think he did last night that, deservedly getting the start in the second half. I think there were 4 or 5 people after the game going, what happened to Carolero? And I'm like, Aiden, made the case with his play that he needed to be out there more. And that's not a knock on Zeus. I thought Zeus had some really nice passing reads. I thought, Carolero was, not having seen him for a full 13 months, was solid enough on defense. Yeah. I don't think there were any problems with how Carolero played or any mistakes that were made. Aiden just brought a level of intensity, effort, and focus that, if you're a coach who's demanded that out of a guy for more than a year and he's giving it to you and not just in a small dose, you don't park him to start the second half. Right. That's what good coaches do. They say, you are giving us everything we want. We're going to roll you out there. And realistically, we talk about Missouri, we can talk about Missouri's, lax defense at times or some of the issues that have lingered over from last year, but Missouri gets separation in that second half because Aiden Shaw's out there doing really, really good things defensively and on the glass. He's doing what Dennis needed him to do. And, when the moments were there to try and contribute offensively, he could, but, people asking again, what happened to Zeus? Aiden played him off the floor. And deservedly, that wasn't, anything against Zeus at all. It's just Aiden gave us what we've been looking for at least a year. So kudos to him. Again, does that carry forward? It's going to be really interesting against Memphis and some more live bodies on the perimeter, but
more physical, more experienced, more talented team.
Yeah, just going to be really, really interesting to see how much of that translates, but really, really heartening to see that. And I think I tweeted it last night, it's one sample, one game, but you see, people talk about projectability. What you saw last night from Tamar and Aiden were the traits that we saw from them in high school, projecting, scaling up a little bit, doing what they need to do. Now it's a question of, can you supply that every night? Or if your primary skills aren't going there, can you find other ways to contribute? If Tamar is not knocking down shots, does the on-ball defense translate? If Aiden's not grabbing a bunch of rebounds, is that engagement still there to be solid off the ball? Particularly, when teams do overload them, will that engagement be there to recover in time? There are things that, are going to be a little bit more nuanced that I want to see from them, but at least on a first glance, it was great just to see the big ticket items get checked off.
Well, yeah, so I think that allows us to kind of pivot to maybe some of the negative things, the things that we were less pleased about. And I think the first thing that comes to mind is probably our garbage time and some defense. Things that were problems last year were problems last night. One of the things that held Missouri back, despite having a great team sheet for the NCAA tournament, was, their metrics. And a lot of their metrics came down to how they performed in garbage time. So, we're sitting there, and I said this in our group chat last night. I was getting frustrated watching it. One, because there were so many fouls that
it was not a tight whistle either. It was not a tight whistle.
No. I don't think I ever saw one of their calls and been like, oh yeah, you probably just could have let that one go. All of them were just obvious fouls.
Yes.
But there were so many that as like we're getting into like we were still in the first half, like 2 minutes to play, and Texas A&M was starting their second half. Both games tipped off at the same time.
It took an hour and 15 minutes to play the first half. It only takes like 55.
So I'm just sitting here, I'm thinking, man, like
we
we're going to be here until like 9:15 or 9:20, and I've got a study hall to write. I just want the game over in a regular amount of time. So yeah, so I was frustrated by that. But then, you know, like as I'm watching the game kind of play out, and it's just like, all right, like we're out to that 30-point lead. This is where I'm interested to see how things are maybe different than last year, and they weren't. Like,
they were not.
You know, and look, you make some substitutions, you know, especially, and you know, again, I think you kind of brought this up, but like Kurt Lewis, sort of not coming in until very late in the game. Like we don't want to make any judgments on that because like you're coming in, you're cold. It's hard to kind of, you know, turn it on with like 10 minutes to play in the game after you've been sitting for 30 minutes. You know, but with him, it was like him on the court and you know, Caleb Brown and, you know, maybe a freshman or two or three. And like that rope slipped like it did last year. And it's just like, and next thing you know, like they're only down like 18 or something. And it's like, can we just beat the margin on Ken Palm for once? Can we do that? And yeah, so I got a little frustrated watching it.
My rant will get out of the way here now. There will be somebody in March, if they are jockeying for a better seat, who are going to say they should only care about the results. And I will say every possession matters. But every possession has always mattered. These metrics that we're talking about are not made up. They're based on how many points you give up on a possession of defense, how many points you give up on a possession of offense, and the difference between them. And, you know, last night there were other teams that were up, you know, 25 or 30 with 10 minutes left. You know what they did? Made it 35 or 40. They finished decisively. And so if you're going to sit and say, well, people should only care about the results and just black and white wins and losses, this stuff is just wonky and it has no bearing on it. No, it's you have 40 minutes, you have 70 possessions. What do you do with those? Every single one of them. And, you know, Missouri last night, first game of the season, dropped 7 spots in adjusted defensive efficiency. They're like 210th in free throw rate. They were not great on catch and shoots. They allowed 37, 38% shooting on spot up threes. These are the things that, like, again, I understand most people are going to only look at the top line ones. You're only going to care about what they win or lost. But if you get into a situation in March where the team sheets are similar, the other team that played well across all of their possessions is going to get the nod. And Missouri had an opportunity last night, if nothing else, to give itself breathing room come March. If it beats the margin, that's a little extra insurance that they could have bought. And so I think that's how people need to look at it is, are you maximizing every opportunity you have, even on night one, to help yourself a couple of months from now? You know, we can talk about caveats and some certain, you know, extra context to that, but the things that were driving some of that were not situational. And some of those issues were in the first half as well.
Yeah.
You know,
overhelping to the 40 points in the first half.
Overhelping to the midline, miscommunication and pick and rolls, particularly in the middle if it's guard to guard switching. You know, late closeouts to the corner. If you beat this team in the first wave of the press to the half court and a guy helps up, there's a corner three. There are things that have existed, you know, from the, you know, I went back and looked at it. There were the same things in the USI game a year ago. Like I remember I went back and looked at my notes from the rewatch of the USI game and this one. A lot of overlap. The Venn diagram was basically a circle. And so, again, maybe having Tanji and Vanover helps things. We can talk about the schematic ways that would help. But you worry about these things at some point, not just being a part of your personnel or part of rotations, or man, it's late in the game, focus naturally slips up. There's a part of which when there's a point where it's just like, this is ingrained kind of either in our scheme, in our culture, and in our DNA of how we're playing. And, are there going to be trade-offs that are necessary? Maybe a little bit of offensive juice to help yourself defensively. Maybe there's some things that happen, but again, night one, we should probably stop griping about it, but there are things that existed that just make you jumpy as much as they make you excited.
I'm just looking. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So Arkansas-Pine Bluff played 9 guys last night.
Mizzou played 12.
7 of those guys scored 15 points. 2 others scored 64. And this is on a SWAC team. And I'm kind of thinking like, look, I realize production has to come from somewhere, but like, is nobody going to guard like Kylan Milton? Like, no one's going to like prevent him from going to the free throw line. He scored 15 points at the free throw line. He took 10 shots and scored 34 points.
Yeah.
Joe French, 30 points. Granted, he took 27 shots, but I mean, like 64 points in 2 dudes. And
yeah,
again, like it's Pine Bluff. Some of it's like, all right, but there were several times where that French is a guy who's a shooter, and you're closing out with hands low,
or just losing track of him.
And I just
or where you are on the floor, and
like this is it. There are some basic like defensive fundamentals here that yeah. I get it. It's Arkansas-Pine Bluff. Maybe you don't scout them as hard as you do Memphis or an SEC opponent, but like those guys shouldn't do that to you. Come on.
But you should know lift and drift, right? Like you should. If you
I'm gonna let the dude with the highlights, Macaulay. Wasn't that his name?
Yeah,
Kane Macaulay. He had the nice highlights in his hair. 0 for 2 from 3. Why don't you like let him take a few extra licks at 3-point range instead of
So there was some KYP stuff. There was like, I'm perpetually mystified how like they'll wind up eventually parked right on the midline, and it's like, all right, like that's 2 passes away. Even if you're aggressive, that seems like it's too far. Like maybe you should only be a half step into the paint, not full step and a half. Like there's some things like sometimes where you wonder about positioning and off-ball stuff, but again, that existed a year ago. Part of it I think is like they are going to sell out in the middle gap. They're going to sell out to if you are a junkyard dog based staff, that imprint is strong to get into the middle of the floor and provide help there and flood it. But there are some times last night where the guy doing the X out is Caleb or it's Noah. It's not someone who is fleet of foot trying to get out to that shooter. And, in scrambling there becomes some open hips and some driving. And then you get to the issue of, there's no rim protector back there either. So there's just stuff that happens stylistically and schematically that you're just like, I've seen this movie before. I don't need a sequel.
So as we kind of look ahead to Memphis, they're going to be without, Vanover again. And one of the things like, you don't want to make sort of these, grand generalizations. Yesterday did feel familiar in a lot of ways. But they were missing 2 of like the most important additions of the offseason. 2 guys that I think, like Dennis sort of placed a premium on bringing these 2 in. I mean, Taji was like right away, we want to get this guy in. He was a perfect fit. Like he's a good defender.
Really good off-ball
but-
defender. Really, really good off-ball defender.
And having somebody who is 7'5" in and around the rim will help rim protection. And Missouri kind of struggled with rim protection yesterday. But that's not going to be the case for Memphis. Like, Vanover's going to be out. We don't know if Tanji's going to be out or not. But it will be interesting to me because Memphis is also missing Penny Hardaway. Hardaway is suspended. What was that?
It was essentially, I think, for improper contact rules. Essentially, I can't remember, but it's 3 games. I think it was stemming from the Wiseman thing, like a couple of years ago. IRP hit him with a
IRP. I think that was the ruling from them. Okay. Yeah. It's so long ago that it's hard to actually remember what it was for. But I think you're right. I think it was for the Wiseman.
It was so long ago that James Wiseman's rookie extension was not picked up by great distance. So that's more at least 3 years at that point. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah. So they're without him. DeAndre Williams has his waiver to play a 27th season in college basketball was denied. So he
will not be able to sub-specialize. He'll just have to, in fellowship, he will not be able to take another one. Won't be able to
yeah, like he's 27 years old. Like I tend to think that, maybe we should have some kind of age cutoff at some point. Like, you can't play college sports anymore.
We had that with high school kids. Some states won't let you do it after age 19. I mean,
yeah. But that is the situation with Williams. They did beat Jackson. I almost said Jacksonville State. Jackson State. I believe by 18, 17, something like that.
17 points.
Our good old friend Javon Quinterly was there.
Yep.
Faced him many times at the old Alabama.
Yep. He has not rediscovered the juice from that sophomore year at Alabama. 4 assists, 3 turnovers, shot 2 of 7 from the floor. It's not a great debut for Javon in a new place. This is a team that I think the big question for them was, were they going to be able to get more than 6 or 7 guys deep? The front court is thin-ish. They didn't have, Mikey Williams is a freshman who has some serious legal issues out in California related to gun charges, who is enrolled in Memphis but not with the team. DeAndre Williams was supposed to be kind of an anchor for them because they could have paired him with Jordan Brown, a former 5-star kid who has bounced around to 3 other schools but was the Sun Belt Player of the Year at Louisiana Lafayette. So the thought was, if they had Mikey Williams kind of as some guard depth, particularly kind of as that combo spot, and if they could have Dandridge and they could have Brown with 3 experienced guards, they might have enough collectively to get through. Now the questions they still have some really nice pieces. David Jones is kind of a small ballish bully ball 4. He played, pretty well at St. John's last year. He's back alongside Jordan Brown. So they have those guys, but then it's really just kind of like true replacement level guys behind those 2. They have Quinterly. They've got Caleb Mills, who is on his 3rd stop, but won't be playing point guard. He started at Houston, went to Florida State. Now he's at Memphis. I think he's going to probably thrive a little bit more as a second side creator, kind of slasher type. Jumper's going to be the issue there, but fortunately they went out and they got another extremely well-traveled guy, Jaquan Walton, who shot 40%. Missouri saw him last year. Walton shot 3.
see if off the top of my head if I can remember all Walton's stops.
This will be fun for you.
I will say that I'm not going to remember which JUCO he attended.
But he went to JUCO.
He was originally committed to Mississippi State.
No. Started at Georgia. Tom Crean basically buried him. Went to JUCO.
But he committed somewhere before Georgia.
It wasn't Mississippi State though. But we're just going college career.
No, I want to know, because originally he was committed somewhere, and then I feel like it was that he never went to Mississippi State.
He committed to Mississippi State out of JUCO, but then didn't go there.
Okay, so that's what it was.
Yeah. He committed to Georgia as a high school kid.
He originally signed with Georgia, played at Georgia for a year, went to junior college. After junior college, went to Wichita.
He committed to Mississippi State, but then Mississippi State fired Ben Howland.
Was he allowed to resign?
Either way, he committed to Ben Howland along with the coach.
Yeah. Committed to Mississippi State, changed it up, went to Wichita State.
Played well there.
After Wichita State, he committed to Alabama this last offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Was caught with marijuana or at least marijuana smelling in his car with some friends in Tuscaloosa, and Bama cut ties, and he ended up at Memphis.
Yes. So
that is some traveling.
That's a journey. It's a journey. So last night, Memphis started Quinterly, Jones, Walton, Dandridge, and Nick Jourdain. So the question I have is, did Slick Rick Stansberry, who is the interim coach, ironically, Slick Rick is the interim replacement guy for someone suspended for violating recruiting rules, because
who replaced Frank Haith as the top assistant, right?
It's a farcical situation. Yeah. Anyway, so Slick Rick started 2 bench guys last night. My guess is maybe he wanted to audition them, like Dennis did for some deep rotation guys. But you'd assume that the starters for a legit high major matchup would be Quinterly, Jones, Walton. Maybe, you'd think Brown would get in there. Maybe Mills would get in, but this has all been a long, entirely too long, winding, meandering, pick your descriptor, preamble to Missouri's backcourt is going to have a test on Friday night. Some older guys, some athletic guys that I think have a good sense for who they are as players. And all of them have been at programs where physicality is, sort of emphasized. There's going to be a big that's a legit back to the basket big in Jordan Brown. And you don't have just a guy who can even wall up and play with size. Jordan Butler, welcome to college, potentially. You're going to need to guard Jordan Brown for some stretches. So not a ton of proven depth at this point, but I think the top line guys there compare favorably. Now, if Aiden Shaw plays the way he did, last night, if, Tamar Bates can, approximate what he did, I think things get in the balance there. But it's going to be really, really interesting, I think, to see, what the backcourts do there. Because Memphis has some talent there. They have some guys who can, play physically, play in a straight line, and make things happen. So you would like the perimeter defense to be a little bit more buttoned up than it was for the entirety of the Pine Bluff game. So that's what has me a little jumpy here. Is there are guys who would like to feast on what Missouri was offering up in abundance on Monday.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to be a test.
And Penny fields really good defensive teams. He's fielded really, really physical and consistent defenses over this 3 years there. So this is a group that can potentially make Missouri uncomfortable in the half court.
Yeah. sort of equate them as like a little bit similar to like Arkansas as like, being a lot of like long physical defenders. Maybe not quite to the same level, but similar.
Yeah.
So, well, that's Memphis. That's Friday. Before the Tennessee football game. For those who are looking for how to watch that, I believe it's going to be on the SEC network.
Yeah.
I think as we're recording this, my internet connection is lagging here because trying to load up the KenPom page. SEC network at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern. Nice little precursor to a big weekend of Mizzou sports. Following that game is SIUE.
Brian Baroni has done nice work there. Brings some key pieces back, but I think their best player is still out recovering from a knee injury.
And that's next Monday. So we'll probably
well, they got Rashawn Taylor back. He is playing. That's good.
Probably wait to record again until Tuesday.
Yep.
So we'll
Memphis
have both Memphis and SIUE to review. I'm sure we'll go just as in depth on SIUE as we have done on Arkansas-Pine Bluff. I believe we took about 30 minutes on Arkansas-Pine Bluff. But Matt, in our defense, it was the first game of the year.
Yeah.
And after not watching this team play basketball since last March, there was a lot that we wanted to talk about. As far as actual game action, is there anything else that you wanted to cover? Pine Bluff, Memphis, SIUE before?
Only thing is that Memphis is considered a less than one possession toss-up. Would be a nice kind of like borderline quad 1, quad 2 game to pick up early. Not a make or break deal for Missouri, but hey, it's a home game against a potential tournament team that will probably be solidly quad 2. You want to get those in your column, no matter when they are on the schedule. So should be a great game. Should be a toss-up. Hopefully Mizzou Arena is lively, and Missouri can, burnish their team sheet pretty early.
I like it. Pick up a win. We'll cover it either way. There is a little bit of recruiting news that we can talk about. Tomorrow is signing day. Missouri is going to, or should be expected to sign 5 players. It is currently the second highest rated class in the 247 sports composite behind Duke. I believe Duke has 3 5-stars.
Yeah.
Including the top overall player in the class.
Yeah, and they might be trying to add VJ Edgecombe because, you need 5 stars.
As many as you can stack if you're Duke, I think you stack. But Missouri...
Mizzou can't catch him at all either. Just to tell you all, there may be some that's not mathematically possible.
No.
Duke is locked that up. It's over. It's done.
But the 5-man class is our man Batang, is the top rated guy, who's currently 26th in the composite.
Yeah.
And then Marcus Allen, who I believe is 56th. I was just writing about these, so my memory is going to be a little bit bumpy. Then Trent Burns, who is in the 70s, 74.
Yeah, he was in the 74 to 77 range.
Yeah. And then Nimble Peyton Marshall. I believe he was 97th in the composite. And then T.O. Barrett is 121.
Yep.
I believe. All right. Those are all just because I was writing about it today. Those are the guys that are all expected to sign tomorrow. There is one guy that could be added to this class, and we're going to talk about him. He's not signing tomorrow. His name is Jaden Quaintance. Matt, I'm not sure if you're familiar with him. Are you familiar? He is a top 10 5-star kid. He has been on campus at Missouri, so I'm surprised you haven't heard of him.
I don't pay attention to these types of things.
Yeah. So
I'm watching tape of him. No clue about him.
Mr. Quaintance is there is a little bit of news on this, and I think it was surprising news to both of us because all along through this recruitment, it was sort of understood that the sort of three main threats for his services here were Missouri, Kentucky, and the G League. As of this week or late last week, whatever that was, he removed the G League as a potential and listed the top 4. I can't even remember who's the other. Is it Florida and Ohio State?
It's Ohio State, Florida, Kentucky, and Missouri.
But everybody seems to think that it's either going to be Missouri or Kentucky.
Yeah. That seems to be the consensus at this point. Everyone, I think you said it before we started, and I would agree. When everyone is happy about where they sit in this recruitment, the handlers in the circle have done a great job putting out the smoke, just with the smoke screens.
If you read Kentucky recruiting boards, all that kind of stuff, Kentucky
great
feels
impression.
Great.
Love it. Made a great impression when he got in there for Big Blue. Really, really likes what they've done with him, with guys like him before. If you read about Missouri, loves Dennis Gates' directness, honesty, loves the system, loves the tempo. Really feels like they're going to let him kind of play in that Kobe Brown role. Don't just see him as a 5. Everyone loves everyone right now. But money or love, Sam? Money or love?
Well, right, and we've long also understood that this is a NIL battle. It is very much if you can top the offer, then chances are you can get the kid. And I don't blame him. Honestly, I think if he comes to Missouri is kind of showing that they do a pretty good job developing guys. They're they have a couple guys in the NBA already. That's a good start. He'll get paid well if he goes to Missouri. Kentucky, conversely, has a lot of guys in the NBA. Also, he'll get paid well if he goes there.
Remuneration is not the problem.
Yeah, he will be well compensated wherever he chooses. But I think this is a situation where I'm surprised that the G League is no longer an option. I'm guessing that Missouri and Kentucky are probably able to top whatever offers that they had for him. And my sort of instinct was I thought that the G League was if they were going to be able to get close enough to where Missouri and Kentucky were, that the ability to not have to worry about school and just go be a professional was probably going to be too great. But who knows? That appears to not be the case. I am happy to be wrong, especially if he ends up at Missouri. A little less so if he ends up at Kentucky, because it means we have to face him. But he's a talented kid. Just if you watch some of his, his tape from more recent games versus 6 months ago, there's a noticeable difference.
Yeah.
And he's really like a very, very high ceiling prospect. Yeah. So probably spring we find out what happens.
Yeah, who knows? Timelines change, but he had sort of put out the word in October that spring was probably the likely timeline. And who's to say that the G League doesn't come back? The reporting had always been that the G League was floating a contract structure similar to what Scoot Henderson was going to get, and Scoot Henderson spent 2 years in the G League. He earned $500,000 a year, so the thought was, okay, $500K 2 years. Would they go beyond that? If they're out at the moment now, my presumption is that they are not going to the numbers I've heard high 6 into 7s for both places.
Mm-hmm.
There's always a degree of opaqueness in the market. Numbers can be bid up or, depending on motivations, but high 6 figures is one that I feel pretty confident about as a minimum there. So it was going to be competitive with the G League there. And the thing is, he's got 2 years until he can enter the draft, but once he picks a place, that doesn't negate his flexibility. He could come to Missouri for a year. If he doesn't like it here, there's the portal, and he can, rebid it. If he doesn't like Kentucky for a year, he can rebid it. Nothing's to say he couldn't leave college after a year and go take a contract in Australia or in Europe for a year. So I think people saying we get a guy for 2 years, there's flexibility and malleability in Jaden here. I think everyone's saying, oh my God, we get a guy for 2 years. Jaden will have options.
Yeah.
He will not be boxed in. And,
the transfer portal giveth and the transfer portal can taketh away.
Ask Texas about how they felt about, Ron Holland swearing off the G League last fall. Ron Holland was making the same noises and committed to Texas. And then suddenly April got there and suddenly that G League offer got better.
Yeah.
And now Ron's a pro. So, I get it. People are excited. People are not dreary pessimists like me, but until he is on your campus, in your practice gym, playing for you, I view it as all fungible until then. So,
right.
I mean, if you can close him and you can get him here, awesome. But 5-star guys, future NBA guys, they're not applying to your job. They're weighing your application at this point is probably the best way to put it. So,
well, yeah, and I think that's that's basically something that I've kind of used in the past is to too many people sort of think that recruiting is the other way around. That's what it is like all the college coaches are the applicants. They're looking for the prime job, and Quaintance is just that. So he's a guy who's going to be able to choose where he wants to go. Missouri, Kentucky, it's probably going to last a while. Going to get bid up, see how much they can get, and good for them. If he ends up in Columbia, yay, because he's a good player, and I like good players. And good players help you win games. So I am for that. But I am with you to the degree that
I don't believe until he is moving into a dorm. That's where I'm at.
I think if he's hitting campus like next August or even like over the summer, like I'll feel better with that commitment.
Yeah,
I think once guys hit in the summer, they're probably going to stay enrolled.
Yeah, if he's showing up for the summer June intersession, moving in, you're seeing like 15-second snippets of him on social media in Mizzou practice attire, then you can probably breathe easy.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is, and the other thing is his circle has not hesitated to move decisively. I think he was at 2 prep schools before getting to Word of God last year. He was on 2 grassroots teams this spring. Like they know what the plan is and they know what the objective is. And even in interviews, they are very clear. It's to maximize his draft slot.
Yeah.
And I think, I appreciate the transparency here because that, he's not coming here to major in accounting. He's got a talent. He's got a skill level that's, pretty rare. Everything is about maximizing that to the greatest degree. So I understand excitement. I understand people, coming into my mentions and just responding with Tiger or he's Mizzou. I'm glad you're happy, but again, until he is listed on a roster and in a practice gym in Columbia, I view as every option is on the table. So that's the sad pessimism that runs my life.
Well, so we're gonna get out of here. I think that's all we had to hit on. The last thing that I wanted to bring up is a little bit of an ad read that is not an ad read.
Handled this so well, so smoothly.
Well, so if you are in the St. Louis area and looking for a spot to eat, I highly recommend a restaurant called Sunday's Best, run by a big-time Mizzou fan by the name of John Perkins. He's a little bit of a friend. If you like fried chicken, if you like Southern cooking, chicken sandwiches, those kinds of things, they've got a great burger. Just rolled out a catfish po' boy. Matt, they're open for lunch now. So starting this week, they actually are open for lunch 11 to 2, starting Wednesday through Friday. The brunches are crazy. You can't even get in. But the food is excellent. Everything there is delicious. If you go in, ask for John, tell him that you're a Rock and Radio listener, and he'll talk your ear off about the Tigers. How great is that? So that's my ad read in quotes. I am excited about my buddy's new restaurant. The things that they're doing there. The food is fantastic. I think I took you to Juniper.
You did.
To Juniper when you came through a few years back. So Juniper is now Sunday's Best. So go down there if you're in St. Louis, eat the fried chicken. You will not be disappointed. And then, yeah, that's all I got. So with that being said, we're out of here. We're going to be back. I don't know if he'll be back. He'll be back, this guy. Or if we'll make Watkins do something. But we're in weekly modes. Dive Cuts will return next week on Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. And stay tuned. Click subscribe, because if you do, then you get all of these episodes and before the box score as well, and Rock M Nation Reacts, and we got more content coming, Matt, because we have women's basketball podcast coming, we have baseball podcast coming, we have all kinds of great content getting ready to be beamed just directly into your feed. So thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next week. And again, I'd like to say thank you to Blake for joining me. You can follow him on Twitter, at the Blake Level. Do that. Subscribe to Southeastern 14. Also, if you have not yet, subscribe here. We are looking for all the subscribers that we can get. The more subscribers we get, the more people get to see this stuff, and the more people that will want to talk about Mizzou basketball, which is what we all want. So thanks everybody for tuning in. As we get into the season, you're going to start seeing us weekly. So we'll be back next week with more episodes of Dive Cuts.